So this here is the suet. Suet is the fat that is around the organs of the cow or cattle. So usually around the kidneys. So it's a lot cleaner fat than you get with your beef trimmings, and it can burn and be nice and clean smelling, have no cow smell if it's treated properly. So I've got a lot of sinew here that I need to go through and remove, and I'll do that in a moment as well. But first I need to prep the mincer. Okay, so the tallow's back in the fridge because it needs to be kept cold and makes it easier to do the mincing. So this here is my mincer. So it is a larger mincer, not one of the ones that get attached to your KitchenAids or your Smags or your Kenwoods, those kind of things. They burn out really quickly over time, especially doing large quantities. This particular model is a Lumina, I think. Yeah. And I've had this for about 20 years and I haven't killed it yet. So, you know, there's always the first time, but hopefully it's not going to be today. So this little baby gets used for everything, including my sausage making, cabana making, all of that, whenever we buy our large cuts of meat and have excess, and for doing mincing and things like that with the pork. So I need to take off my sausage attachment first of all. And these machines are really easy, low maintenance, you know, all the bits come apart, which is great. They're made from stainless steel, so they're easy to clean. This one's just got a lever on the side, just needs to be undone, and then that will release the blade and the front guard here, which gets removed. And inside here, obviously, is my centerpiece. So I'm just going to check the machine to make sure that there's nothing inside that shouldn't be inside. And I'm just going to give it a really light spray. So all of the moving parts, just with a neutral oil. This is avocado oil, so it's neutral. You can use machine oil if you want to, and I have done it in the past. I just don't like the taste that it leaves in the product. And although I won't be eating the suet, I don't want to be putting anything into the machine that they're going to leave an unpleasant taste or potentially burn. All right, so this piece just goes back in place. We'll just tighten that arm back up again. These are quite loud, these machines. Okay, so they are definitely larger volume sounding than a normal smaller machine, but they're definitely worth it. Like I said, I bought this thing nearly 20 years ago, if not longer, and you still use it regularly whenever we are mincing. Does well for pork as well. Just checking all its seams and seals. It's got a rubber seal here, just making sure all of that's still fine, making sure it's all clean. This particular model has got a square, if you can see that, little square nut here, and that's where its blade needs to get fitted onto. So we'll put that in place, because if that is not in place, then we don't work at all. This is the most important part of the machine. This is its blade. You can put it in the wrong way around, unfortunately, and you will have no success. So it goes one way and one way only. And then once that's in place, it'll lock. So I'll just clean that up properly. And it clicks into place. Simple. Now, it comes with 3 blades, this one, you know, and because I'm doing suet, I'm going to start with the largest of the blades. And again, just simply locks into place. If it doesn't lock into place, then you know you've done something wrong. It's as simple as that. Okay, so click him into place. There's a notch on either side that it has to go into, and then we just screw the top back on. We'll add the chute. Now everything's in place, I'll turn it on and give it a test. Like I said, it is a loud machine. It does have a reverse, which is useful. It's got a start, a stop, and a reverse. So you know pretty quickly if you're doing something wrong. I told you it was loud. Right, so I won't be letting you have to listen to that while I go ahead and mince up the suet again, which I'll bring out. So I'll turn off the sound and you can just watch it happen. First though, all of this needs to be trimmed. So I want no connective tissue if I can help it. Nothing cow-like looking. I just want the straight, pure white. And just removing everything else. Pre-order this from a butcher. Some butchers will stock it. Don't ask for the beef trimmings, specifically ask for suet, because it is different. I'll go ahead and continue to trim all this, and we'll come back and I'll show you what I don't have kept. And you see this clear membrane needs to be removed. All right. Okay, well, that's my reject. And this needs to all get minced. All right, so after I've trimmed off all of the sinew, I end up with nice, lovely white fat, which is what you want. You want it as clean, as crisp as possible. I'm going to be canning this, so I want it shelf stable. So I want it to be as clean as possible. Also helps with the cooking process as well to make sure it is nice and clean. So I'm just going to slip my bowl under the front, and then I'm going to turn off the sound so you guys don't have to hear everything. So that's our suet all minced up. Really simple process. It's just a matter of taking the machine apart, popping it into the sink and giving it a clean. Really simple. Couple of seconds, no big deal when it comes to a cleanup of the machine. Like I said, because it's all stainless steel, so it just all simply goes back together in the same position it was in previously, back into the corner, and it can wait. Now I've got to do some mincing of the beef. I am doing some cabanas, so they are a beef and a pork cabana. I'll be doing both later on, but because I am going to be doing some sausages, I'm going to save some of this suet before I render it all down. So I will bag up, because I do kilo batches, so I'll bag the suet into 100-gram portions, all weighed up, ready to go, and that way I can pull them out of the freezer when I'm ready. Trying to get a butcher to do this for you, good luck. If you can, great. It's probably something they may do for you at the end of the day if you've pre-ordered the product, because once they put this through their mincing machines, the machine has to be stripped down, and so they lose time, production time, so they don't do it at the beginning of the day. It's an end of day job. So I'll just do 4 bags. That should be enough. That gives me 4 kilos, or 4 different recipes. When I do different meatloaf recipes, sometimes they call for suet. I usually don't add it because I don't have it available, and I'm not going to exchange it for just general beef fat, because it's a different product, flavour, that kind of stuff. All right, so these can go into the freezer. I'll put them into a separate bag and mark them as suet 100 grams, and I know what they are, because I've also got bacon fat and things like that in the freezer at the moment to do the cabanas. And then it's time to melt this guy down. So when it comes to doing the suet to make the tallow, 2 methods. You can do a water method, not my favourite, purely because we're making this shelf stable, and so sometimes when you do a water method with the tallow, because you are adding water to it, where it's doing the stovetop method, we're taking it away. If you increase the amount of liquid in your tallow, then you lend it to potentially turning moldy or rancid, both of which you definitely don't want. All right, so you can do this with a water bath instead, so using a double, which I could have just put this whole pot on top of a saucepan with boiling water beneath it and walked away and not had to do anything, okay, because that way it never gets to a high enough temperature, because we don't want to burn this and we don't want to scald it, and we don't want this going to a high temp. We want pure white, beautiful, clean tallow, and that tallow can be used for candles, it can be used for skincare. Right, we just need to keep this at a low temperature. That's basically all I'm doing. So I can control that with this wok. I can set it to temperature no higher than 100 degrees, which is boiling. So I always set it to about halfway on the wok. The wok's got a minimum and a high sear, and I like to set it on a 5 and come back and check it in half an hour and see what it's like. So it's only been about 10 minutes so far, and as you see, it is breaking down rapidly, and that's because it's been minced. So it's a much faster technique by mincing it. You don't have to spend hours at the stove waiting for pieces of beef to render down. Now, all of that tallow that I took away that had the beef parts attached to it still, I've popped in the refrigerator. That's not going to go to waste either. We will be rendering it down after I've finished this process, because this will only take me half an hour. Once I finish doing this, I'll render down the rest of the other beef, and it will go into the cooking beef section in the refrigerator. I'll add that to the tallow that's in the fridge. That's for cooking with, because it has a beefy taste to it or smell to it as well. Flavouring, so it's perfect for the barbecue, to oil the barbecue plate and things like that, or to use when frying up pieces of beef, when I've been velveting beef, things like that. But it's not suited to pressure can because it still does have some of that sort of animal essence in it, we'll call it. Because it hasn't been strained repeatedly, all of that sort of stuff. It's purely for cooking. This will be getting strained when we're finished with it, which won't take much longer. It's given up most of its oil already. I'll give it another 10 minutes. I've reduced the heat down to 3, and I'm just going to let that simmer away now. So it's been about another 10 minutes. Trying to evaporate as much liquid as I can from this tallow, but I'm pretty much going to say that's pretty much done. And so it's time to strain it. So I'll just turn this one off because we're going to do another batch afterwards of the cooking tallow. But we'll turn this one off. And we're going to strain it. I've got just a normal kitchen sieve, and I also got a couple of layers of cheesecloth as well. So it gets triple the straining is the idea, to try to get out as much of the sediments or other additives that's in here that we don't want. We want this as clean as possible to end up with beautiful white tallow, more so than the golden yellow tallow. Golden yellow tallow is usually because it's been overheated and it's been cooked at too high a temperature, which is not what we want. We want nice white tallow. If we're going to go to the effort of doing tallow, then we're going to at least get the best product we can. So we're just going to pour that off. And all of these pieces of fat that remain are not going to be wasted, like I said, because I am doing a cooking tallow as well. So because I'm doing a cooking tallow, I'll be putting them all back in the pan again, just in case they've got any fat left in them, because it doesn't matter now if they crisp up and change the colour of my tallow for the next process, because the next process can be any colour it likes. It's going to go onto the barbecue. But it's gets stored in the fridge versus on the shelf in jars eventually. This needs to be cooled first, and then we need to remove any liquid that could still be in here. There's a jiggling around. Yeah, any liquid, any water, any juices will all be washed off and then tidied up tomorrow. Okay. So let's have a look at the colour of the tallow. Very clear. Not a bright yellow colour. That will turn into a beautiful white when it cools. So very, very pale yellow, which I'll show you in a jar later on. When we go through the next step, you'll see it once it's cooled, the colour of it. Just going to let that continue just to drip naturally and drain. Now with a very clean, dry bowl, preferably one that's wider at the top than it is down the bottom. Make sure there's no moisture in that one. I'm just going to transfer the tallow into it. Just one little bit that I don't want transferring, that piece. The rest is fine. It's lovely and clear. There's a little bit of sediment down the bottom. I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to put that back into the saucepan. No point ruining that whole batch over 5 mils. And like I said, I'm going to be cooking up this other remnants from what we put aside. Now this is going to go into the refrigerator now. We're going to let that set overnight. And we can get back to the suet again. So this is all of the jiggly wiggly suet that we have already extracted most of the fat from the first lot of fat anyway, or tallow now. So this is the remnants. So it probably will give me more when I turn it up to a higher temperature, but it will also give me a discoloured because it's going to be crisping up. Now, this can be kept, people use this as crackling, as a protein snack. Not me. Definitely not. I'm not keeping it. But my animals love it as a treat sprinkled on top of their food. All right, so that's going in there. And then here is the pieces that didn't get minced up because they all contain some sort of animal connective tissues or fibres, etc. I'm not going to waste these. These are just going to have beef written on them. And then they go into the freezer where there is a compartment of meat bags. Okay, so they're not one-use bags. Otherwise, it's just a waste to use at one time and then discard them. So I hate doing that. So they all just have, I have beef, I have bakery, and I have herbs, greens, that kind of stuff. I don't keep chicken bags, just don't feel the need to. But anything marinated, anything like that, no, definitely not. As long as the bags are reasonably clean and they're easy to identify and they're not old, then I don't mind putting them into the freezer straight after I've used them, like I have this one, and then it's safe to reuse next time. So while that's cooking away, the beef trimmings from the rumps that I split up last week before, a couple of weeks ago now, this is the rendered down tallow from the pieces of beef. So you can see that there's some, I suppose, impurities in the bottom, which I could easily cut off if I wanted to. But like I said, this is for cooking, so it doesn't bother me. It's kept in the refrigerator and it gets used whenever we are doing any cooking of beef products, or if we want to do potatoes, for example, with that lovely crispy beef taste to them that are getting cooked outside on a barbecue or in the smoker, then sure, don't have a problem doing that, using it for that. So it gets used and it's not wasted, and it's certainly a lot healthier and better than some seed oils, which I very much don't like to use a lot of in the house. So I'm just going to cook this suet down. I might just turn it down a little bit and just let it not get too crackly, and just give it time to release all of the fat from all of those new pieces that I've just added. All right, there's dinner rolls for tonight. And I'm just going to get them off the tray and let them cool. While that beef's still rendering, we'll come back tomorrow once it's done. How good do they look? And pop a tea towel over the top of them, as we always do, so that we don't end up with crispy, crunchy, crusty rolls. Not hamburger rolls. People like, they're not buns, these are hamburger rolls. So just a clean tea towel over the top of them once again, and I'll just let them sit for another 10 or so minutes. The rendering of the last of the beef is still happening, and then I'm just going to take all of this out, and I'm just going to put it directly into the strainer and just let it drip until all of the fat's been released from this as well, and then add it back to the cooking ones in the fridge, like I said. I've got bacon that I need to turn in the fridge as well, which is curing. Today is day 3 for the bacon, and day 6 for the corned beef, which will then be pastrami, so it's still got a little way to go yet, but also always something to do. This we are using for bacon. Okay, so I've got 2.5 kilos here of a nice thick pork belly, and I need to turn that into some bacon. So it's quite a big piece, so I'm thinking about cutting it in half and doing 2, which I'm going to do. Okay, so I'll weigh each of those so that I get the right amount of cure for each one. So I've weighed my porks and I have their numbers written onto their bags. That way I can keep a track of them, and the date as well. So I'm just going to write, I'm going to write bacon, and I'll write today's date as well so that we can keep a track of them. All right, so I've got my cure that I need for the bacon. Really simple. I just need to make sure it's well covered, so I'm just going to use my trays, and I'm just going to make sure every nook and cranny of the bacon on all sides, especially the belly flat where I had the ribs removed as well. Make sure every single bit of that is well coated with the cure. So I need 45 grams for each of my pieces. And anything that's left in the container when I'm finished will also go into the bag with the bacon piece, or the belly piece now, which it is at the moment. It's pork belly because we're going to cure this. My husband used to do this working at Dandy. So they did it a little bit different because they did it big. And then we would get the whole pieces of bacon, which I would then, that was my job to slice them up. They were massive. We had a big bacon slicing machine. Anyway, back in the day when we were children. All right, so make sure that one's really well covered. And then I'm just going to add some of my maple essence to it as well. So I will just add a teaspoon in addition to the maple cure, because the maple cure's got a powder. This is an essence, so it's much richer. All right, and I'm just going to rub all that in just to add some extra flavour to my husband's bacon and my son's bacon. Not mine, because I don't eat this stuff, but they do. So, and then that piece can go into its bag. Now it's had its massage, and it can rest. And I'll get on to the second piece. So again, 45 grams of cure. I'll put pictures up of the store where these products were purchased. It's an amazing store for all the bits and pieces. Anything barbecue-ish, you will find there, including the barbecues, which were just amazing to look at too. And then we went inside into the butcher area and were just sensory overload with all of the different kinds of animals, cabanas, you name it. So I took some pictures of that as well, which I can put up as well. How many different types of cabana can you have? Apparently a very, very long fridge section of every flavour that you can imagine, from maple to chili to honey, just so many different kinds. So many different cabanas. My husband was in seventh heaven. Okay, so these are our bacons that are curing. So maple bacon with maple essence added to them as well. Day 3. What's today? Today's Monday, so yep, day 3. So they still have at least a couple of days yet before they're going into the smoker. So it's the next day, which means the tallow has cooled in the refrigerator and it's looking pretty, lovely and white. So it's time to get this out. I'm going to need jars to put it in, and I'm going to be reheating it as well in order to pour it into the different jars. So I'm going to need just 2 pieces of equipment. Obviously I'm going to have to heat the tallow back up again, and a knife to trim off anything that is in the base of this tallow, and jars and my pourer. So to make my life easy, I'm going to be using my funnel, and I'm going to be doing some small jars because it's gifting season coming up. It's Christmas, and tallow is such a versatile, useful ingredient or product to have in the kitchen, as well as lots of other uses. It can be used on all leather goods. It's really good for ourselves and all of our gear down the back in the tack room, so keeping all of our leather moist, as well as the boots as well, helps keep them waterproof, as well as keeping them nice and supple. Great for belts, those types of things. It can be used in cooking, it can be used in baking, it can be used in furniture polishing, wood polishing, your cutting boards, all of those types of things, as a sealant. Once again, so many uses for tallow other than skincare, soaps and candles, you know, so it's kind of worth doing it, and it's a little bit of fun, and it's something worth doing with the kids as well. So, you know, it's not that hard. It just takes a little bit of time, obviously, with the mincing and then the cooking down, but this part's pretty much entertaining, you know, it's the fun part. So we'll start off by having a look at the tallow, and I've got the tallow from the cooking tallow,
and I'll show you the different colours. It might make it a little bit easier to see now that they've chilled, the difference and the smell. Well, you can't smell it, but I can. As soon as I open that container, I immediately smelt beef, like roast beef. That's what it smells like. So this is the tallow from the beef trim, and this white is the tallow from the suet. So you can see the difference in the colour of it, as well as this lovely white piece. Okay, so no smell, little bit of smell, because this one has been made with the beef trimmings, you know, that we took off the tallow. Plus I've also melted it down with some of the other beef fat as well. So that's probably not a true test. The true test will be when we have a look at the tallow from the suet, which is the filtered clean tallow, and it should have no or very, very little odour to it at all. But let's get to that. So first thing we're going to have to is get it out. Okay, so this is in the refrigerator. So just popping it out of the bowl, and I'm hoping here it'll just flip out. That's pretty good. It's almost completely dry. So I don't have to get rid of any impurities in it. It's already completely clean, crisp and white. Perfect. So all I need to do now is to melt this down in order to put it into its jars. But if you had any liquid, it would need to be removed, and if you had any imperfections, you would need to cut them away. This is sometimes quite soft and moist with moisture, but this one's pretty good. So the rendering process has been successful as far as getting rid of all of the moisture, etc. Now we just need to heat this guy back up again, and then we can put it into the jars for so many different uses, like I said. And there are more uses to using tallow than what I've just mentioned. Moisturizers, yes, obviously, it's on my hands now, so it works as a moisturizer, as well as being used to season cast iron pots and pans, barbecue plates, you name it. It's a really versatile ingredient. So I'll be doing some larger jars, but I'll be doing a lot of smaller jars as well for family. So I'll go ahead and melt this guy down, and we'll start again. So just on a really low heat again, just to get it melted. Best method to get it melted down on a low heat is to use it as a double boiler. So that's going to sit on top of a saucepan of boiling water. So while that's heating up, here's our bacon once again. We're on day 4. Really starting to firm up now. So the cure is starting to draw out the moisture out of the pork bellies and turn it more into a cured product. So once again, just needs to be turned, massaged through. Excuse my dog behind me, because he thinks this is supper, and it's definitely not. So that's Bilbo the pug, cheeky little boy. But no, he's definitely not getting this. So that's now being flipped back over, massaged through, and back in the fridge. You can go for it. It could be cooked tomorrow. I could cook it tomorrow, and I could do one tomorrow and leave one till later, but I'm going to leave them all go for the full 8 days. So very simply, just a saucepan smaller than the size of my bowl, and I'm just melting back all that tallow once again so that it's easy to pour into its containers. It takes about 5 minutes once the water starts to boil. This way we don't overheat the tallow either, because it can't get to a high enough temperature being in a water bath. So I've reheated the tallow. It's 80 degrees. I've just checked the temp, and I've put my funnel in boiling water to warm it as well, because it's metal, you know, so I'm trying to keep everything reasonably warm, so that way it makes it a longer time that I've got to work with this product. So I'm just going to skim off all from the top to start with. I'll get to the bottom later, and probably leave the bottom more so for possibly using for cooking and baking versus everything on the top. So I'm just going to skim off the top first, fill up my funnel, and then I should have taken the lids off all of my jars, but that's okay. This isn't going to chill too quickly in today's temp. What I might do is what's left in this container, because it will chill faster, I might just pour it off into a jar quickly as well. I can always top it up later. So it's not too hot. Pretty nice. Nice pale, sorry my voice today is terrible. Nice pale yellow colour is what we were aiming for. Not that golden sunshine sort of colour when it comes to tallow. The paler the better. Alright, very carefully. Just going to fill my jars. Alright, what I'm going to do is just pop off a bunch of lids. These are 50ml little bottles, so they're not too big, not too small. I've got smaller ones, I've got bigger ones, but they're not a bad size for, like I said, for doing my boots, the saddle, or any of that equipment. The larger bottle I can use for cooking, and if there's enough of this left over, which I highly doubt it, I can put it into a couple of larger containers as well. This was just a small batch that I was doing because I didn't have access to the normal large amount of tallow that I would normally get. It wasn't available at this time of year. Apparently everybody's making soap. Apparently it's a thing to be making homemade soaps, and it's not surprising, I guess, because it is coming up to Christmas time. You know, it's not that many weeks away, and so as a gift, people do make homemade gifts. So soap is on the list, and you do use tallow to make soaps. We used to use it to make candles. Always used it for our saddles, always used it for our leather goods and our paddock boots, because my paddock boots, which are Dublin paddock boots, are leather and they're waterproof, but they do split and they're an expensive boot, so they last for years, but if they're looked after. I'm going to have enough left over to do some of the bigger jars, which is really awesome. Alright, so I'm just going to leave, there's enough in each of those by the look of it. You definitely don't want to be putting this into bottles or anything that's difficult to get out. So wide mouth jars will be perfect if you have them. Actually, I'll just top all these up a little bit to make it easier. Yeah, wide mouth jar, perfect. If you're going to be keeping it in the fridge or anything like that, then any container's fine. Little ice cube tray style is what we've used for in the past, but the larger ones, we've used them in the past, and we have a piece of tallow during winter, not summer. You can't keep it in the stable during summer, but during winter you can keep it down the back for quick access to do the bridles and the headgear for the horse and the blankets. When we bring the blankets out to start using the blankets and they've been sitting for a while, the leather needs to be juiced up a little bit. Okay, I might use this one because this one can go onto, I'm not even sure that's going to be enough. One of these should be enough. Yeah, perfect. So that's all the tallow poured. Time to get the lids on. Now, you're dealing with oil. It's slippery, so have a cloth handy because you might need it. I'll go ahead and finish putting all these lids on, and because this is hot, these lids will vacuum seal, which is another bonus. These are just lug lids, but they will all vacuum seal as well. And let's not be wasting any of it. So I'm going to just quickly wipe out the funnel before I wash it, obviously. But while I've got the oil on this plus the dish that it was originally in, and this one, still got some lovely tallow in it as well. I might as well do my boards. And that will help seal them as well. These boards are only used for bread, so that's okay. Or very rarely something else, but definitely not meat products or anything like that. This one is only used for bread. bit goes a long way, which is good. So those little pots that are 50 mils, they last for ages. Plus, you know, they're shelf stable. Once they seal, because they were 80 degrees when I poured them. They might have been a little bit less. But they will vacuum seal. That wood's going to absorb all of that oil, which is great. And that'll just keep the boards and my heat block as well. But all of these can have smells added to them, essential oils, and that would make a beautiful furniture polish type gift if you wanted to do that. Candles, just stick a wick in them, not hard. And then the wicks you can buy these days, they've already got the bases attached to them, so you can just pop a little wick in them when they're wet as well, like that, or when they're still melted, hot. And you got yourself a little scented candle, which burns cleanly for quite a long time. If you've got the timber handled kitchen utensils, whether they be wooden spoons, spatulas, or any of that, this cloth now is impregnated with plenty of oil. So it's a perfect opportunity. While I've got oily hands, I might as well also do all of these tools as well, because these go into water, so the timber does swell. So it doesn't hurt to make sure that they're all well looked after, and you get a good lifespan out of your utensils that way, if you do look after them. Because these things cost money, obviously, when we first purchase them, so it's good to keep them and hand them down if you can, if they last to the next generation. If they're well looked after, timber lasts forever. You know, it just needs to be oiled every now and then, kept clean. If you're worried about bacteria when it comes to timber, you can always bleach it. Okay, brand new looking, back on the shelf. They can go as well with the rest of them. And you guessed it, not wasting anything. So the cleaning cloth that is now covered in oil, going into a bag marked tallow, and that is my cleaning cloth. Can go in with all my cleaning supplies, because there's a lot of timber shelves and things in this area that get wiped down regularly, and so I can reserve that cloth for later use as well. Simples. Those of us have got wooden bowls, salt vaults. Again, outside, not the inside, but keeps the moisture from getting into our salt if we can keep our vaults airtight, and so the oil will penetrate the wood and all of the little nooks and cranny, and also keep our vault, which contains our salt, nice and dry, which stops it clumping up as well. And for obviously salad bowls and ornate bowls and things like that, again, it keeps them moist, it keeps the wood dry by filling in all of the gaps, which then means our fruit, etc., lasts longer in it. These are all bowls that were created by my husband's grandfather. We have several different ones that we have kept. This is one of them. This is my favourite bowl, because it's just so cute. All right, well, yeah, the salt one as well. The salt one's pretty good too. But yeah, all right, on to coming back once this is finished.
Alrighty, look at that. Beautiful. All right, so that's all chilled down, obviously. It's now turned lovely and crystal white. Perfect. Exactly what you want your tallow to look like. So little jars, bigger jar, and the jar that I can use that's already got a resealable top. This one has got a 2-pack lid, so it can stay here on the shelf with the rest of them. All the rest of them have all popped their lids down, so they've all sealed. So they're all shelf stable. Perfect for gifting. Beautiful. Well worth the effort. But aren't that pretty? That's tallow done properly. Thanks, guys. Bye now.